What's the difference between common law and civil law? And how do you talk about legal systems in simple English? In this beginner legal English class, you'll learn key vocabulary about court structures and global legal traditions. We will also practice using comparatives and superlatives to describe courts and legal authority, like higher court and the most important law. We know that learning legal English as a beginner can be very difficult. That's why we built a step by step course in school. Join our school group for beginner friendly lessons, webinars, and a private forum so you can finally speak legal English with confidence. Click on the link in the description. Here is what you will learn in today's class. First, we will explore the two main types of legal systems: common law and civil law. These are used in many countries and affect how courts and judges work. Then we'll talk about court levels like lower courts and higher courts and what each one does. We will also learn how to use comparative adjectives like this court is higher than that court, and superlatives like the Supreme Court or Constitutional Court is the highest court. All of this will help you speak clearly about legal systems in simple English. Let's begin by looking at the big picture: the legal systems around the world, and not all countries use the same kind of legal system. In countries like the United States and the United Kingdom, they use common law. That means many legal decisions come from past cases, what judges have said before. But most countries, including many in Latin America, use a different system called civil law. This includes countries like Costa Rica, Mexico, Argentina, and Brazil. In civil law systems, the laws are usually written down in codes, and judges apply the written law more directly. We will look at how these systems are different and learn how to describe them clearly using simple English. Let's start with the term common law. This is a legal system that uses court decisions from the past to guide future cases. In common law systems, what judges say in one case can influence other similar cases. For example, the United States uses a common law system. That means lawyers and judges often look at older cases to decide what to do in new ones. Now, let's look at civil law. Civil law is based on written laws, codes created by the government. Judges in these systems read the laws and apply them. For example, Costa Rica has a civil law system. In Costa Rica, lawyers and judges usually follow the written law, not older court cases. A legal system is the full structure of laws and courts in a country. It includes the rules, the judges, the lawyers, and how everything works. For example, each country has its own legal system. That means laws and courts are different in each place. Now, let's talk about the word court. A court is the place where a judge or group of judges decide legal cases. People go to court for trials, decisions, or legal arguments. For example, the lawyer is going to court tomorrow. That means the lawyer will go to a legal building to work on a case. A lower court is where most legal cases begin. It handles smaller or early stage matters before they go higher. For example, the case started in the lower court. If someone disagrees with the result, they can appeal to a higher court, the Supreme Court, also in other countries known as Constitutional Court. The Supreme Court is the top court in the country. It hears the most serious cases and has the final word. For example, the Supreme Court made the final decision. Once this court decides, there is usually no higher appeal. Let's look at these countries. Some use common law, some use civil law. Can you remember which is which? The United States and the United Kingdom use common law. They follow old court decisions to help make new ones. France and Costa Rica use civil law. That means written laws and legal codes are the most important. Great. You're starting to see how different countries organize their legal systems. Here's a courtroom. What happens in this place? It's a court, the place where judges and lawyers solve legal problems. A court is where someone might go on trial, give evidence, or hear a decision. For example, the lawyer is going to court tomorrow. That means she will be part of a legal case, maybe helping a client or making a legal argument. Look at the courts here. We have 3 levels: the lower court, the Court of Appeals, and the Supreme Court. The lower court is where most cases start. The Court of Appeals is higher, and it checks the first decision from the lower court. And at the top, the Supreme Court. It is the highest court in the country. So if someone says the Supreme Court made the decision, you know it's the final word. Let's talk about grammar, comparatives and superlatives. We use a comparative when we talk about 2 things. For example, a judge is more experienced than a new lawyer. We are comparing 2 people. The judge has worked longer and knows more, so we say more experienced. Now, for superlatives, we use these when we talk about the top or bottom, usually out of 3 or more things. For example, the Supreme Court is the highest court. It's at the top of the legal system. Now, for short words, we add ER or EST. For example, high. The comparative of high is higher. The superlative is highest. For longer words, we use more and most. Example, experienced. The comparative of experienced is more experienced. And the superlative of experienced is most experienced. This grammar helps you describe people, courts, and systems more clearly. Let's talk about how we compare things in English, especially in legal English. When you describe people, places, or things, you often want to say that something is better, faster, or more experienced. But how do you know what form to use? Here's the rule. For small, short words, usually just one syllable, you add ER to compare 2 things and EST to compare 3 or more. Let's take an example here. This contract is shorter than the last one. Or, this is the shortest contract I have ever written. See how we just added ER and EST to short? Easy. But for longer words, usually 2 or more syllables, we don't add endings. Instead, we use more and most. For example, she is more experienced than her colleague, or he's the most experienced lawyer on the team. You wouldn't say experienceder or experiencedest. It's wrong and it sounds wrong, right? So remember, small words add er or est, and for big words, use more and most. Try listening for this in legal meetings or documents, especially when people compare clients, deadlines, risks, or teams. This rule comes up all the time. Now, let's try a comparison using a short word, clear. We want to compare two clauses. Should we say, this clause is clearer than the last one, or this clause is more clear than the last one? The answer is clear, because clear is a short word, so we just add er. That sounds natural. This clause is clearer than the last one. When you are writing or speaking in legal English, these comparisons help your meaning stay precise. Now, let's try a longer word, professional. Should we say she is more professional in her tone, or she is professionaler in her tone? Correct. It's more professional, because professional is a long word. We don't add er, we say more professional. This is useful when describing lawyers, writing styles, or even how someone communicates with clients. Let's look at a superlative, the form you use when comparing more than two things. We want to say something was very, very quick. Should we say, that was the fastest court decision I've ever seen? Or that was the most fast court decision I've ever seen? The correct answer is fastest. Fastest is a short word, one syllable. We use est. Fast becomes fastest. This kind of sentence is great when talking about how long legal processes take, like hearings, approvals, or negotiations. Let's compare two versions of a legal agreement. Which sounds right? This agreement is more detailed than the draft version? Or this agreement is detailer than the draft version? It's more detailed. Detailed is a longer word, so we use more instead of adding er. This kind of sentence is very useful when reviewing contracts, proposals, or any legal document where details matter. Let's practice with two people, a judge and a new lawyer. Who has more experience? The answer is A. Judge is more experienced than a new lawyer. This is a comparative sentence. We compare two people and we use more experienced because experienced is a long word. We don't say more new. That doesn't sound natural. And most experience is only for 3 or more, so it doesn't fit here. Now we are using a superlative. Look at these 3 courts. Which one is the most powerful? The answer is the Supreme Court is the most powerful. This is a superlative sentence because we're talking about 3 courts and one is at the top. We use the most powerful to describe the highest, most important court in the system. Let's look at 3 countries in Latin America: Costa Rica, Mexico, and Brazil. We're going to practice comparatives and superlatives using the word big. First, Brazil is bigger than Costa Rica. Comparing 2 countries, Costa Rica and Brazil, we use bigger, not more big. Second, Mexico is bigger than Costa Rica. Same thing. Now, let's compare all three countries. Which is the biggest? Brazil is the biggest country of the three. This is a superlative sentence. Brazil is not just bigger than one country, it's the biggest of all. So remember, 2, comparative, bigger, 3 or more, superlative, the biggest. My favorite part, idioms. Let's break the ice. This means starting a conversation in a friendly way so everyone feels relaxed. For example, at the beginning of a meeting, a lawyer might say, "How was your weekend?" to break the ice. This helps people feel comfortable and ready to talk about important things. Next one, on the same page. It means everyone agrees or understands something in the same way. For example, before a meeting, lawyers might talk to make sure they are on the same page about the plan. That way, they can work together smoothly. Another common phrase is touch base. This means to have a short conversation to check or update something. For example, a lawyer might say, "I'll touch base with the client tomorrow to make sure everything is ready for the meeting." Call it a day. This means to stop working because you've done enough for the day. For example, after a long meeting, a lawyer might say, "Let's call it a day," meaning it's time to finish and rest. Cut to the chase. Sometimes people want to cut to the chase. That means skipping small talk and going straight to the important part. For example, a client might say, "Let's cut to the chase and talk about the contract." By the book. This means doing things exactly according to the rules. For example, a lawyer might say, "I handled the case by the book," meaning they followed all legal procedures carefully. Let's finish with a story about legal systems in Latin America. In countries like Costa Rica and Mexico, the legal system is based on civil law, meaning the laws are written clearly in codes. In others, like the United States, they use common law, which means judges help create law by their decisions. Think about the courts in these countries. There are many levels, from the lower courts, where the cases start, to the Court of Appeals, and up to the Supreme Court, which is the highest court. We used grammar to describe this. The Supreme Court is higher than the Appeals Court, and the Supreme Court is the highest court. In legal work, it's important to do things by the book, following the rules exactly, and to be on the same page with your team, so everyone understands the law the same way. So understanding legal systems help lawyers work clearly and correctly, no matter which country they are in. Now, let's review what you learned today. You explored key legal vocabulary, words like common law and civil law, which are so important to understanding different legal systems. Then you learned about court levels, the lower court, Court of Appeals, and the Supreme Court, and how they work in many countries. Our grammar focus was on comparatives and superlatives. You practiced sentences like, "The Supreme Court is higher than the Appeals Court," and "the Supreme Court is the highest court." These forms help you compare things clearly. Finally, we covered useful idioms like by the book, which means following the rules, and on the same page, which means agreeing and understanding together. Great job. Keep practicing. Keep using these words, grammar, and phrases to build your confidence in legal English. And we know learning legal English as a beginner is difficult. Join our school group for easy lessons, live webinars, and a supportive forum, and start speaking legal English confidently. The link is in the description.